Hello, I'm Kevin Benedict, Senior Vice President of Solutions Strategy here at Regalix. And I want to thank all of you guys for joining us today. Now, I'm very excited because I have a guest that's appeared here numerous times over the years, and it's always great to have him, Suhas Uliyar. Suhas, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Kevin, good to see you again, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And Suhas, your title continues to expand at Oracle, where you're Vice President of AI, chatbots, and mobility. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so as you know, I started as the Vice President for the mobile product management team. And very early on, Kevin, when I joined Oracle, as we set out a strategy for what I call customer experience platforms, we had identified that we were in the phase of mobile first. And also Oracle was relatively unknown in the mobile space. So I had mobile in my title to make sure that our customers, the analysts and folks following Oracle knew that we were focusing on mobile. But our overall strategy has always been that to deliver what we refer to as the ambient human interface. And what that really means is that if you look at the touch points of the way we interact with data today, right? So we started with obviously the web. Then we transitioned to a mobile first, where we had either applications that were native to the mobile device or mobile web. Today we're getting more into progressive web. We had a slight flirtation with Google Glasses, but we believe these wearables are going to become more prominent. Of course, the watches, now the world of chatbots, fast forwarding the world of immersive technologies, whether it's augmented reality, virtual reality. Hey, the cars now have Google Car and Apple, in the dashboards. So as we look at all these different ways and how we can access data, it's incumbent on us to realize that we cannot decide or define the interaction to just one channel. The whole world of the cross-channel, multi-channel. So I just called it the ambient human interface, only because that you can't really predict where your users are. And not only that, right? You can't predict that, but also the fact that you need to be able to surface up data in a contextual way, depending upon that channel, right? So although, for example, you're driving your car, you can see stuff, but you want to prevent the user from touching stuff so they can focus on the road. And so speech, the cognitive service called speech, becomes very critical there. So the long and short to it was, we couldn't come up with a title with that described all of this. If I had a title called the VP of Ambient Human Interface, nobody would quite understand that.
But it would be so cool.
It would be cool. Yeah, absolutely. So we started with mobile, and then we added chatbots. The chatbots to scale, you need AI, and it needs to be powered by very powerful machine learning, cognitive AI. And so we added chatbots to my title, and then to make sure that we weren't a chatbot that was just a simple rules-based, we added AI to that, and we have further plans of AI. And so, my title is growing, and I'm enjoying it.
All right. I still like that ambient human interface. You have to push for that, Suhas.
Okay, done.
Okay, so talk to me about, let's dig deep into chatbots. What does a technology stack look like? Number one, let's define what a chatbot is in your world. And number two, let's kind of look at the layers in that stack. Talk to us, kind of open it up for us.
Sure. So a chatbot, simply defined, is essentially an automated program that acts on behalf of a user, right? So the simplest way I explain to customers, and the use case that makes a lot of business sense is customer service, right? The amount of times you've tried to get to customer service either via chat, human-to-human chat, or sort of an IVR call. And you ask some very sort of simple, basic questions. Example, what time does your store open? Is your store open for President's Day? If I want to do a return, what is your return policy? These are some very simple questions that actually, if we as humans and users made some effort, you could find the question in their FAQ on their website or something else. But we sort of prefer to talk to people, right? Mm-hmm. So chatbots essentially is automating a lot of those human interactions with end user. Now, why have chatbots become popular, right? So it's really sort of the adoption and the drive of messaging platforms. I mean, we have this huge fascination towards things like Skype or Facebook. I mean, Google Hangouts, like we were just chatting, right? Mm-hmm. And why is this so popular? Number one is it's an interface that you don't need to learn. And what's interesting is even if you take senior citizens in their early 70s, late 80s, they're today using SMS or WhatsApp to at least communicate with their grandchildren or among themselves, right? So you don't have to teach them how to use SMS and WhatsApp, but you do have to teach them how to use a new mobile app, right? So they do have that little technology friction when they look at sort of new applications, but not so much when you look at the familiarity of the interface, right? The second thing is the immediacy of the response. The chances of you getting a response if you send someone a text or an SMS is magnitudes higher than leaving a voicemail or an email to somebody, right? The third thing is having a natural conversation, right? I'm just talking to you in the way I know best to communicate with you, right?
And I've been replaced by a bot years ago.
Exactly, right? So these things are really driving the adoption and the momentum we're seeing in use of these channels, right? And also things like the Amazon Dot, Echo, Google Home, where we're sort of moving into the world of digital assistants rather than just a chatbot platform, right? So first, this is the reason why we're seeing this increase in that. The second thing is, of course, for customers to be able to increase their reach to where users actually are, right? So getting to the Facebook Messenger channel, getting to the WhatsApp channel, getting the WeChat channel, and so on and so forth. So that is sort of, and that, in order to get to that scale, you need to be able to automate a lot of things in the back end. I mean, if you just sort of said, okay, I'm going to have my human customer service agent now reach out to folks on Facebook Messenger, you're just adding another 2 billion people onto your channel, and you can't scale, right? So you need a level of automation. So that's where the chatbot platform comes in. So what does it take to sort of build a chatbot platform, right? So number one is deciding sort of what interfaces or channels you're going to interface with. Now, the communication integration is relatively straightforward. I mean, there's this concept called webhooks, and you can essentially connect to pretty much any of these channel platforms. But there are a lot of different nuances in the way you integrate with these channels. So for example, things like the UI component. So what looks like a card or a carousel in Facebook Messenger looks very different in Skype, Line, Telegram. And in fact, you don't even have that UI when you talk about voice, right? Then there are other nuances like the retries, the security, the login. So there's a whole bunch of different controls as you interface with that. So the first aspect is determining how are you going to integrate to all these different channels and what channel are you going to support. The second part, and this goes back to the one part of why messaging is getting popular, is that I can converse with you in natural language, right? Now, I'm using sort of pure English talking to you, but people tend to sort of mix English and Spanish, English and Hindi, and so there's different ways in how you communicate. So if I was just chatting with you on WhatsApp, my communication style is very different compared to the computer. Right. And this is sort of where the world of natural language processing comes in. And and we all know sort of why AI is in popularity today. I mean, the algorithms haven't quite changed in the 25 years since I did my master's in AI. But what's happened is we have enough compute, we have enough data to train the models. And so natural language processing becomes a very critical component. Now, there are lots of different models in how you choose natural language processing. But the ultimate goal for that stack is to basically understand what is it that the user is asking and be able to do what's called named entity extraction, right? So being able to understand, from the input, can I extract information that I can basically convert into some level of structured action for the computer to take, right? So an example would be let's say I wanted to send money to you, right? So I say I send $50 to Kevin from my savings account, right? So first, the computer needs to recognize that I'm creating a transaction where I'm transferring funds. The second thing is then saying, okay, I now understand that you want to send from your savings account to Kevin. Now, it might not know who Kevin is, so it might prompt me to say, who is Kevin? What is the account number? And then what is the currency amount? And we want the system to automatically extract all this information. Otherwise, it'll be a lot of development work, right?
Right.
So that is sort of the fundamental function of natural language processing. And the first wave of chatbots are pretty much textual in that manner, or spoken conversations in that manner, whether it's using text or speech. We are basically converting that into some common denominator, which is text. And then we are basically processing text. And the function of the NLP is basic classification. I'm going to classify this into certain types of vectors or however you want to do it. So we use things like word to vec or phrases to vec, and then be able to look at similarities, increase the probability, and then do some self-learning as the machine learning, deep learning algorithms go. And the second part is extraction, right? So that is sort of one area of what you need in the sort of building block of a chatbot platform. The other part is you need a way to define your dialogue with the end user, right? And this is a very critical aspect. And at Oracle, one of the things that our team focused on from day one is defining this conversational design experience, right? And it's very critical because ultimately, if you remember back to the days of mobile, what did we all do? All the digital agencies do first. We focused on having this delightful mobile user experience, right, with all this really cool stuff. And then we figured out, well, how do you take this really cool UI I've built and make it a really cool UX, which is also including the integration of wiring into the backends, right? And a similar process holds true as well, because the way the bot responds. So my theory, or at least my philosophy with chatbots is don't insult the end user. When I talk to customers, some customers believe that the chatbot should behave like a human. You're never going to get that. Humans are humans after all, right? And so my view is no. The end user will know whether you're talking to a bot or a human. And the whole goal is to make sure that you have the best experience even with a bot. And we understand the limitations of the bot and take action when you hit the limitations of the bot, right? Right. That's sort of what we call as the conversational design experience, where we go through and really sort of, in a way, define the flow and the process flow of how you want to communicate, knowing very well that we as humans are not linear in our thinking, right? We tend to go off on different tangents, right? And you have to make sure that the bot is designed in a way that can handle those sort of tangential use cases, bring the user back to what it is, and answer to the best process, and be polite in the way, and also offer different ways of how you pass information back. It doesn't have to be textual. It could be graphical. It could be menu-driven. So while the user input is very much local language or multi-language, the bot can then surface up data in a much more delightful way that users can interact with, right?
So it sounds like there's still hope for us liberal arts majors in the world of AI.
In fact, that's exactly who are the folks that are actually looking at designing this conversational UI. And it's interesting that I talk to a few people who correct my English every so often. And I'm like, it's a bot. It doesn't have to be perfect. So the dialogue designer becomes a very critical aspect, which is a third part, as I see, as a building block of a chatbot. The next part is sort of the integration to data, right? So this is a common data problem, and back to your question about why is my title going from mobile to bots to AI? Again, one of my fundamental philosophies there is that if you've built a mobile app, if you've done it the right way, you already have all the mobile APIs that you have exposed for you to consume in your mobile API, your mobile application. So why not reuse it, right? And so the last part of building a platform is certainly sort of the ability to consume APIs, whether they're RESTful, SOAP, whatever else it is, and be able to consume that into your bot interface. So now when you make a question or you ask something, it's able to go back and get data from your system of record, right? So those are sort of the four fundamental pieces today. But in the world of AI, I sort of mentioned natural language processing, right? And that's sort of the fundamental piece, or the first piece that you typically use. But I tend to define that as your conversational AI platform, right? And what's distinguishing within that is that the conversational, or rather the natural language processing, is one feature of the conversational AI platform.
Mm.
And I'll begin going into that in more detail later if you want.
Okay. Yeah. So talk to us about how important all of this is to Oracle itself. And where is Oracle seeing the future, and what are they actually going to do with these technologies?
So our viewpoint is that AI is not orthogonal. AI is in everything you do, right? And I don't know if you caught the press release we did, or announcement we did last Monday in New York, where Thomas Kurian, in fact, Larry Ellison announced the autonomous database back at Open World. Mm-hmm. And we further added to the database world, and we announced the autonomous pass, right? And just like you have the autonomous cars, our view of the world is that the platform, the platform as a service, should be autonomous in the way it runs itself, right? I mean, when you look at the difference between things or applications and platforms running on-prem to cloud, yes, the fact of the matter is we're moving to cloud, so we take off all the complexity of patching and resources and all that stuff.
Right.
But basically what's happening is you're removing resources from one data center and moving them to a cloud data center, right? So our view is, how do we automate that? How do we automate patching? How do we automate, scaling? How do we do all that in a way that there is no human involved? And so, for example, that's the very, very cool differentiated feature that Oracle announced in the database, the autonomous database, where we can do auto patching. We can take care of security in those cases where we notice there's something going on and auto secure the database. Realize that, hey, there are certain tables that are now beginning to be used more often, so let's auto index it, or, so there's a lot of things that as the application gets used, we can apply AI to making that service much more smarter.
I love it. I see little tiny bits of this in applications today, where now my calendar recognizes somebody's meeting in my email and automatically ask if I want it on my calendar. Just little tiny glimpses of what's possible going forward.
Indeed. So this sort of takes us to what we are doing in the world of chatbots. So chatbots for me is the sort of the first sip of a cup, right? The ideal sort of chatbot platform begins to transform itself as a digital assistant for you, right? So what does a digital assistant do for you? It sort of recognizes things that you frequently do, your routines, your likes, dislikes. It is able to do things for you, but obviously by first recommending and saying, hey, would you like me to do this on your behalf? And you say yes, then do it, right? So a couple of examples on the B2C world, right? So let's again take your banking bot. And if you're like, my kid's soon ready to go to college, and I'm pretty sure that every week or month I'll have some payment to do somewhere. So if the bot recognizes that I do that on a frequent basis, is to do that on my behalf, right? So say, hey, you want to send money to Ananya, every Friday, $100, and yeah, okay, fine. And it'll take care of it for me, right? So that really becomes, it's the banking bot, but it's now becoming personalized and becoming my assistant. Now let's take this to the B2E world. Some of our executives get close to 200 to 300 approvals a day, right?
Wow.
About 60, 70% of them are probably not something that they really need to dig into. It's very natural course that we just need for CYA. They just need to make sure that some exec has approved it. Now there are, of course, ones that require things like, an approval to be to promote a VP or hire someone beyond their bands, which they need more clarity into. Now imagine that the chatbot was able to now start recognizing those patterns and say automatically, actually, these ones don't need to go up. I'll approve it on the behalf of the user. And those that require more scrutiny can be then forwarded to the executive. This is
Wow.
what we mean with autonomous paths. Now, taking it a little bit further, also, for example, let's say I'm dealing with APIs all over the world. If I'm traveling, let's say I travel quite a bit, but the default configuration is that I need to, because I am US based, that I would connect to the US data center. But the same US person has traveled to London, right, to UK for a business meeting. Do I really need to connect to the US data center at that point? No. I should be able to, my PaaS should be able to know that, based on the location of the user by his mobile device, we should connect to the closest data center, right? So those are some of the things that we are making available. So imagine now from a performance perspective, a mobile app, that it is aware of where you are, what you're doing, and is able to get to the nearest point where your content is, right? So those are some of the things. So this is at a very high level, the autonomous paths and the use of AI. So AI is pervasive all over. But let's now look at it specifically on a few things, right? So Oracle goes across the stack. We have IaaS, we have PaaS, we have SaaS. Now, Kevin, if you look at applications per se over the last 20 years, right, or 30 years, since the days of Siebel and PeopleSoft and today to SaaS applications, right? There basically may have been three fundamental innovations that have happened, right? One innovation is we moved to the cloud.
Right.
Now, one can argue whether it's innovation or just moving it from on-prem to cloud, but it's still a way of thinking, a different way of thinking. The second is, user interfaces have become a lot more richer in the way you can see things and interact with things as opposed to the olden days. The third thing is mobile first, which is again part of the visualization. But fundamentally, what we do with the apps has still been the same for the last 30 years. So let's take your sales CRM app, right? You still it's a repository of your accounts, opportunities, leads. Okay, you have some fancy analytics.
Right.
But it hasn't changed fundamentally the way salespeople work with a sales CRM. In fact, most salespeople hate using the sales CRM because they have to put a whole bunch of information which they don't care about, right? Now, this is where Oracle's been innovating quite a bit, using this concept, again, using AI to be part of the application, right? And so we call this adaptive intelligence. So an example of that is, imagine you're a salesperson, right? And you went to your sales CRM, you went to your sales bot, right? And your question was, hey, sales bot, tell me what are the 5 deals I should work on that will give me the most chances of making my quota this quarter.
Yes.
Right? And it should return back and say, here are the 5 deals. Oh, by the way, would you like me to set up an appointment for these for the contacts I have? Right? Appointment set, and I'm ready to go. So I don't know, Kevin, you're frozen here, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. Kevin?
Suhas, are you there?
I'm here.
There we go. So you were just about, I lost about 30 seconds of what you were saying.
Oh, I think I lost you, but I was just about to say that, that the salesperson can use the chatbot.
Yes.
To basically ask the question, right? And in fact, the chatbot could also then say, would you like to set up an appointment with these folks?
Right.
Right? And meanwhile, in the background, the chatbot has already sent some basic information about the product you want to discuss, about maybe the customer references, some videos, some collateral. So the sales guy is not calling in cold and saying, hey, Kevin, would you like to know more about chatbots? It is more about the next call could be, what are your use cases and how can I help you?
Absolutely. And if you have a sales process or a customer journey in which you want to lead them through, perhaps it can recognize you're at step 10 of 17 steps, that kind of thing.
Indeed, indeed. So now let's see how AI can be used for those kind of things, right? So classically, you have data via leads that come into your sales CRM system. The AI in the background can look at these leads, starts processing them, looking at things like knowledge graphs that can associate and bring data from multiple systems of record, whether that could be LinkedIn, Reuters, whatever it is. start looking at, is this company actually a viable company? Does it have a financial future? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Do they have any CEO issues? All the sort of background checks you want to do about the health of a company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next, you can look at it and say, hey, it looks like Kevin is the contact. Well, he seems to be a senior vice president, and so he's got buying authority. He's not the janitor. He's not the SVP of janitorial service,
Right?
right? And so let's look at sort of what has he done in the past. So again, look up that. Look at the propensity of how friendly are they to be an Oracle customer. When was the last time they bought anything? Have they been quoted on Oracle's competitors' sites, or et cetera, right? So you can start building this profile, and the AI can start looking at all of this information to now start spitting out sort of what is critical for the business, right? And there's several examples. I can talk forever as you know about these things, right?
I look at that and I think this is the augmented part where you're using AI to augment the human performance.
Absolutely, right? So that's what we call it, adaptive intelligence, right? Then it's about now you start shifting towards more of the platform kind of services. So as we build, so this is sort of where I lead into the AI conversational platform, right?
Right.
So our view of the AI conversational platform is, yes, you need NLP, but the interactions are going to become more cognitive in the future. So for example, image recognition, right? So I'm going to take a picture of a shoe and say, hey, this is pretty cool. Where can I buy this shoe? Right? It's speech, it's video, right? So it's all these different cognitive skills. So that's why I say Chatbot is not just chat. It's actually a conversational AI platform that provides all of this, right? And then is able to sort of understand your sentiment, understand your tone, understand sarcasm, right? Now, as we build all of these, we are building these as microservices and more recently as serverless functions, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the reason we're doing this is we are consuming that in our bot platform. But that also means that let's say you wanted to build an application that was just doing image recognition. And I'll give you an example of that. We're doing augmented reality, right? Okay. Now, augmented reality has been around for a while, right? But there are some severe restrictions in the way you can identify objects, right? And so, like, for example, there are markerless, marker-based augmented reality. There's a whole bunch of different ways you do it. But what we are doing is we're using AI to help identify an object that you can then further augment, right? Now, I'm not going to be building two different AI image recognition models. I'm going to have one image recognition model that is used by my chatbot. So that would be a use case where a retailer. So let me give you an example of that, right?
Please.
So let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So hopefully you see my screen.
Yes, I do.
Right. So I'm going to show you an example of a retail bot, right? Where I'm going to come and say, going to a wedding, what should I wear? What should I wear? Now, okay, just before you start judging me here, the use case here is one of a woman who wants to go to China to attend her friend's wedding, and is basically looking for buying something online, right? Okay, so my session has expired. Start again. Okay, I'll do that. The fun part about doing something in real time.
Yes.
What should I wear? Okay, so what it's done here, this is basically using what, again, within the conversational AI platform, we are using what we refer to as recommendation engines, right? So here, it's basically showing some outfits based on something that's been tagged that's appropriate for a wedding, right? So let's say that I pick this thing with flowers, and I say, show me something similar to that, right?
Right.
So it basically goes to the catalog. So what's happening in the background is our AI engine has been trained on a bunch of catalogs and is now showing things that are basically tagged and are similar to this, right? But let's say I come in and say, this is where image recognition comes in, right? And I say, I don't like these. And so the bot says, okay, you don't understand what exactly that means. Do you have a photo of address you like to upload? So I'll go to my thing and I'll have a picture from a movie called Devil Wears Prada, where you have Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway, right? Now, I've uploaded this. This is sort of where object recognition becomes very critical. So this is using AI and using the Tesla NVIDIA chips to do some very heavy processing, where it starts recognizing the silhouettes or the dress type and then recommends dresses that match that. So basically looking at those black dresses, it was able to match some dresses that really looked like what Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep were wearing, right? So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, so this is what I mean by, a conversational UI. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to chat all the time. This could be an image, right? Now, the same algorithm in the background could be used. So, for example, imagine that you're a field service person. I have a demo of it, but it's a little bit broken right now. But let's say that I was going to go fix I work for a utility, and I was going to go fix a grid, right? Now, I go in there. I need to be able to recognize which machine is the problem. Right? So the problem space is the same, whether it's a chatbot that's recognizing address or a field service person that's going to recognize a machine, of which then I can go get the IoT data to show what's going on with that machine, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So that is sort of what I mean. What we're doing is in the conversational AI piece, we're basically building them as functions or serverless functions that can be used by any developer. Right? So this is sort of the next part of what is very critical to Oracle, where we provide AI as a service that can now be used with pre-trained models to build your own applications.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing.
One last thing. Sorry, Kevin. One last thing on the AI part. And this is very important. So these are all sort of use cases that I walked through. But the last part is also providing developers to build their own AI algorithms. Right, and that's sort of the pervasive AI, where we bring in the big data lakes, we bring in the compute power and the knowledge of AI. So, for example, if you just have a whole bunch of data and you want to find the needle in a haystack to say, okay, what is going on? Make sense of the data. That's sort of where the other AI components come in. Sorry, that was the last part I wanted to say.
Oh no, brilliant! Thank you for sharing that with us. So this is very, very interesting and cool technology you're showing us right now. But where do you think things are going to be in, let's say, 24 months from now?
Oh, it's going really fast. So the first, so AI is going to be pervasive everywhere, right? And so I believe that, at least from what I'm working on, the chatbots to digital assistants is sort of the big move, right? So being able to understand, do self-learning, take automated actions on behalf of the user, bringing in other cognitive skills like sentiment analysis, tone analysis. So what we believe is that your common interface is going to become a conversational one, right? Whether you are, and things like the Cisco Spark, Microsoft Teams, Slack. These are becoming more and more prominent in the enterprise. And one thing we're beginning to see, Kevin, is with mobile, we saw a lag between consumer-facing apps to the enterprise.
Right.
We're not seeing that anymore. In fact, HCM self-service and customer service. Now, customer service is sort of B2C because you are providing services to your end consumers, right? But employee self-service is becoming one of the most widely prominent use cases that we're implementing nowadays. And it also has a feature of B2C there, as in your talent acquisition, right? And so one of the areas that we are working on is what we call a master bot architecture. So here's what we mean. So if you take Oracle, for instance, right? We have salespeople. Salespeople are also employees. We have ERP. We have all these different internal usage of our own product, right?
Right.
And so it's very easy to see that I could have 20 to 30 bots that one user could be using. But now the question is, which bot should I actually use, right? So what we've done is we've created one bot called the Oracle bot, where I come in and ask my question. Hey, what is the I want to change the probability of this opportunity, or hey, I want to check how much vacation balance do I have, right? Or what are the benefits? What are my dental benefits look like, right? This bot does nothing but understands what you're asking and route it to the relevant bot.
Oh, that'd be so brilliant.
Now, why is that important, right? Now, as an end user, you're not asking 20 bots. But now I can know about your preferences across bots through one bot. And now I can start automating a lot of things based on that. Right?
Oh, yeah. Looking for patterns, recognizing who you are, what your interests are,
Indeed.
what roles you are, what are your problem areas, all that kind of fun stuff.
And that's why we call it the Oracle Digital Assistant. That's what we're building.
Very good. Suhas, this is brilliant information. I thank you so much for being so generous in your ability to share that. Also, I want to come back about every 6 months if you're willing and get an update, because this area is phenomenally interesting.
Indeed.
To, I think, not only myself, but also our audience. So I want to thank you so much, Suhas, for sharing everything with us.
Kevin, thank you for having me, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.